Thank you so much for joining, everyone. We are at the Innovation and the Future of Ultralight Gear panel. And we are so thrilled today to have three really great people in the industry who are really on the cutting edge of what is happening within cottage gear. My name is Liz Thomas. I'm from Treeline Review. And we are a gear review website. We're about 7 years old. And our goal is to do gear reviews a little bit differently. So we take our gear out for through hikes, for month, double month, triple month long bike packing trips, specifically so that we can test the durability. And our goal is really to help you buy right the first time. So if you are looking for gear reviews, check out Treeline Review. And one of the things that we also are able to offer are these free panels that are able to bring together our community of outdoor gear enthusiasts and just sort of get an idea, sort of a behind the scenes of how the gear industry is going right now. Without further ado, I want to introduce Lloyd Vogel from Garage Grown Gear. Lloyd will be our moderator today and is a really great guy. He will be leading our three gear experts here, and I'm so excited to have you, Lloyd.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, I just learned two things. One, that we're not getting paid to be here. So sorry, guys. Two, that there's only three great people here. So I'm guessing that's myself, Mike Glavin, and Martina. Sorry, Matteo. I don't think you got the cut there. Um, but no, really excited to be here with Treeline and with our panelists today, and to be talking about ultralight gear trajectories within the industry, kind of what we're kind of seeing in terms of trends and directions. And yeah, a space where the panelists on this call have been a part of the outdoor industry, and particularly the ultralight space for quite a long time, and have been able to see a lot of kind of the growth and development of this particular subsection of the industry. So yeah, without further ado, I'd love to start off with some brief introductions from our panelists. So if you guys, in no particular order, could share who you are, what brand you're with, and what kind of inspired you to what got you into the outdoors and inspired all of this to kind of start off for you. Let's start off with Martina, because she went off of mute first.
Yeah, good call. Thank you. My name is Martina Brimmer. I'm the founder and CEO of Swift Industries. We make bike packing gear. Well, we make bike bags in general, and we service the bike packing community as well as urban cyclists and gravel racers. So it's kind of like our product range spans the gamut. But when it comes to bike packing, I think that what's really exciting about today's panel for me is I'm going to be gathering some intel as well, because my product design and development as like the vessels carrying all of the gear that a bike packer needs gets to adapt to what's going on in the ultralight space. And that has been over the 17 years of running this company, that has been the most exciting progress for me to see. So we'll get into that. I'm really excited about it. Signing in from Seattle, Washington.
Yeah, Martina, that was one of the biggest revelations for me over the last couple of years, is just how much crossover there is between ultralight backpacking and bike packing. And that, yeah, well, the thing that powers you forward is maybe a little bit different. So much of the gear has just a ton of overlap and such similar ethos in terms of kind of what you're doing. So very, very excited to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and just to speak to like my origins too, I really got into the outdoors on like a month-long backpacking trip. And that was the wilderness orientation program through Prescott College. That's where I went to school. And then I had the gear for backpacking, and then I was a total bike nut obsessive. And then I saw that there was a real fluid translation and started going bike camping. So that's really how that segued.
Awesome. Thanks. Mike, you want to take us up next?
Sure. Hi, my name is Mike Glavin. I'm from Zen Bivy. We make beds, that obsolete sleeping bags. I'm currently in Spokane, Washington. I guess I've been in the industry since 1994, when I started with MSR and worked for a variety of different brands, mainly in camp gear, for however many years that is, as that totals up. I started ZenBivy 8 years ago, which is when I met Lloyd, ironically, right at the launch of ZenBivy, is when I met Lloyd for the very first time. And I had worked for a variety of other brands and had always thought about wanting to do things on my own. And the timing seemed right, and the world, the tools are available to allow you to do things and innovate in ways that you couldn't before, just in terms of being able to communicate and bring products to the market without having to deal with the behemoth of the industry, which was what all of my experience is in. But when I started ZenBivy, I left the whole behemoth of the industry behind, and we do only direct to consumer sales. And that's because I find them more rewarding, selling them one at a time to individual people who are going out there and using them. And it's been a slower growth to kind of get to where we are right now. I'm choosing it to do it that way, but we love the relationships that we've sort of forged along the way and being able to do this. And I really feel like ZenBivy, as I'm sure we're going to be talking about more about innovation and change in the industry, I think ZenBivy was just lucky to have, I feel like I stepped away from the behemoth of the old industry kind of right at the right time, as there were others like these two who are with us who were out there driving kind of new ways about how to bring products to market. And so yeah, that's sort of my history and my story and how I got on the esteemed panel today, again with Lloyd after 8 years since we initially started this thing out. I believe ZenBivy and Garage Grown Gear were born and kind of have grown up side by side, a similar timing and similar growth trajectories. So we've both been fortunate to take advantage of the world as it exists today, which I find really inspiring. I love the way that there are things that you could do now, and the products we're able to make now just weren't possible before. So I just feel like it's a great time to be in this part of the growth of the industry.
Yeah, totally. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, there's if anyone wants to do a real YouTube deep dive, there's a video of me reviewing a ZenBivy bag, I think from 8 years ago. That's the only video I ever published as a review, but it's me in one of the original bags. And congrats, Mike, for being in the outdoor industry for as long as I've been alive. That's fun. Not quite, but close. So yeah, really excited to have you here, Mike. And Matteo,
Oh,
excited to have you here and your extreme magnet wall behind. Welcome.
well, thanks for having me. I for a second I forgot that I was like a part of this thing. I was just like listening to the stories. I was like entranced by it. No, so whatever. Matteo Fabro, I'm the marketing director at ZPAX. This is actually my 15th year at ZPAX, so it's been a while. I think kind of what brought me to ZPAX is the same kind of origin story for ZPAX itself. Is our owner Joe Valesco thru hiked in 2004, and he couldn't find any gear that he liked. He thought it was all too big, too bulky, too many buckles and zippers and gigantic webbing. So he made his own stuff, and went through a few iterations along the trail. And by the end, people are like, "Hey, like, will you make me this? Will you?" And he was like, I was only trying to make stuff for myself. And so basically in 2005, he started making it after work in his apartment. And I met him in 2010, and it was just him and his wife out of the garage. And so I started with him in the garage. And I would make the joke that I got to watch Joe live the American dream, going from the garage to like a fairly sizable ultralight company. He has taken care of me, but I think the whole thing is, for ZPAX and myself, is scratching our own itch. It's like we're as a company, when it comes to design and innovation, we're very much the same spirit that Joe had in 2004. It's like, how can we make this better? How can we like cut this off or like do this in a different way? What new fabrics can we bring in? And it's kind of a selfish thing. It's like, right, where you scratch your own itch, but we have a firm belief, and I think 20 years of history will tell you that like if we like it, other people will like it too. And so we feel like that process is bringing value to the community. And I came from my previous job was making like architectural shapes for the exterior of buildings. And so I have like that 3D CAD mentality. So it's like when we're sitting down and designing something, I can look at the pattern and just go, like in my head and like see how everything comes together with like the corners and the curves and everything like that. And so dude, it's so much fun. It's so much fun being in the design process. And so that's like my favorite part of the job for sure.
No, Mateo, it's been impressive to see all the things that have been moving and shaking in ZPAC's land recently. It feels like for a company that has really grown up with Ultralight, kind of spurred on a lot of the growth of it, to still see you all innovating in entire lines of, light versions of the already extremely light shelters that you sell to, some camp shoes that seem to not be able to stay in stock. It's cool to see, kind of leading brands in our industry continue to be innovating to the degree that ZPAC's is. And that's an interesting thought about like, yeah, when you are that core audience, it's kind of easier to build for your core audience. Like you're not just like trying to make money off of that idea or just trying to create something that you feel like you can market to that group. You're creating something that you're interested in, and it's makes it a little bit more easy to be like, oh, this is gonna slap because you'd want to use it.
Exactly.
Well, thanks, guys. Yeah, really excited to have the three of you guys here, and I'm just gonna kick it off with kind of a general question. But with all of the, I feel like I hear this in certain spaces that like innovation is dead in the outdoor industry. No one's being innovative anymore, and I always find that to be a very lazy take of folks not kind of being willing to be able to look deep enough to really find the innovation or to look small enough. So I'd love to kind of start it off just by asking, what trends are you guys seeing in either the backpacking or the bike packing space with gear and kind of like any like general broader industry trends that you guys are seeing as well?
Yeah, I'll go. Somebody will step in and say something. Yeah, it's interesting. I think that innovation is happening now more than it ever has. I do think that there's the avenues to be able to create something and bring it to market and let it get nurtured and grow exist now like they didn't, at least in the world that I feel like I'm sort of coming from. And I do think that the the standard, I guess, in old outdoor industry, I kind of agree. The whole retail model and wholesale retail chain that is going on really inspires retailers to buy what they sold last year and not what they could sell next year. And I think that really does have a feeling in sort of the broader market. But what that's done is it's sprung up a bunch of other brands of people who are just now able to do it on their own. A lot of the stuff that's sold garage grown gear is just like a dude who came up with an idea, and now they can 3D print, and they couldn't 10 years ago, and they can make the thing. And they're bringing it to market. So I think that there's a lot sort of going on. What there is kind of a disconnect, I think, between the merchandised world of old and where the innovation is really sort of happening. And so a lot of times you don't see it. You have to dig deeper. And I really feel like there are two outdoor worlds that are, operating almost independently of one another. At some point, I think this newer, fresher take is taking over the older way, and that the older way is slowly kind of going away, and there's just more and more opportunity for new stuff and new thinking. So and I think if you look at ultralight backpacking gear in the last 10 years or even 8 years since you and I first met, Lloyd, everything that, if you go out and look at what people are using, everything they're using was invented in the last 8 years. There's very little that's carried over from from before that. And so that indicates to me fairly rapid change. Now there still are a lot of the old stuff out there, but when we talk about kind of those core customer bases, they're, using the new stuff. So the other just quick trends, I'll just make it a long answer. I do think that things are becoming less performance focused in the ultralight world and a lot more experience focused. I think the whole I'm going to do the miles. I think that is always going to exist. But I do think, that it's not about surviving, it's about thriving in the new kind of world. And that's why you see things like chairs and Zenbivis. I mean, Zenbivi is a quilt with a sheet, and you can get a quilt without a sheet that's lighter. And so that kind of purist ultralight, I think that's going to exist. Things are going to get lighter and lighter, kind of driven by technology. But overall, I think people are wanting to go lightweight because of the experience and not the performance of going lightweight, and the comfort of going lightweight, and the simplicity in living in minimalism. I think those are the things that are inspiring people and where the growth is. And that old hardcore sort of snotsical, I'm going to go out there and barely survive, isn't really where that kind of created, I think, a lot of the push towards lightweight, starting with alpinism and then kind of through hiking and backpacking. But overall, I think just on the outside of it is really the exciting part, which is like, how can we take this sort of extreme interpretation of gear and take one step further and allow the lifestyle of minimalism to engage me and allow me to go out and engage in the outdoors and experience the outdoors. So those are what I think. I think this is one of the most exciting times. I think you're going to see all the categories of products ramping up with new ideas coming into the future. And I honestly think that this is I think you're going to see a collision between the old world and the new world, but this is, if you're into these activities and you're into the gear that sort of supports them, I don't think there's a better time to be alive. I think that there's just people out there who are getting things done. You don't have to have a big company and a big computer or a lot of money to get things done. You can just get out there in the world and tell your story. So it's a great time. So that's my answer.
I'd love to piggyback on that, because he said so many things that were resonating with me, right? Is when I started at ZPAX 15 years ago, I would say our core customer was like the pure original ultralighters coming from the make my own gear world, and they really were masochists. At the end of the day, there's no other way of putting it, is like, I want the least amount possible not to die, right? And I think what's happened is, with the rise of the ultralight community as a whole, and blog websites and YouTube reviewers, is the core customer for the ultralight backpacking community went from that make my own gear masochist slightly more into the range of an Amazon style customer. I type in best backpack or best light backpack, best ultralight backpack. There's 10 different blog websites that all have the same 10 different backpacks on it. And there's people with maybe not as much experience, or not as much of a masochistic heart as maybe myself and some of the original hikers had. And so you see, I think Dan Durston said it in one of the Blueprint series to what Mike said, they're the expanded experience, right? And so all the innovation that's been driven by those masochists helped us get down to this really, really, really lightweight. And now we're seeing there's still a space for that. But the flip side of that is they want that expanded experience. So how can you get zippered storm doors, L-shaped zippers, magnet toggles, more internal space on a tent? How can you get all of those things and still bring the weight down, right? And so it's like, we just came out with a Hexmid tent, which is literally the tent that our owner used on the CDT in 2009, which was the first DCF tent ever to complete a through hike. We just released a slightly updated version of it. It's like 9.6 ounces, but it's like, I joked with Joe, our owner, I was like, we built a tent for 12 people, like, right? It's like, we made this crazy ultralight tent for 12 people. The flip side of that is our Pivot Solo tent is 13.5 ounces, but you can be 6'2", have a ton of room, zippered storm doors, L-shaped zippers, magnet toggles. And I think that trend, to Mike's point, that I'm seeing in the last 2 years is like people still want the lowest weight they can get while maintaining the comforts that they're looking for. And it's like where those two worlds are colliding is like the sweet spot right now. And that's really kind of what I see. The I don't think the material innovation is going to give us incremental gains, really. I know there's like some new temp materials coming out, but they actually don't weigh less than DCF. You might get some extra bias strength, but it's not dropping the weight, right? So it's like I don't think the weights are really coming down from the materials anytime soon. Right now, it's just figuring out how to use the techniques and feature sets to match what people want in terms of that expanded experience. That's definitely the trend I see.
Thanks, Mateo. Martina, I know you've got thoughts in this department.
Yeah, I mean, I've got conflicting thoughts about it. So I think I would say, I don't know, Michael, forgive me if this is wrong or steer me in a different direction, but I think that the items we're using are essentially fundamentally the same, but the materials have changed dramatically. Do you think that that feels right? Like sleep system, food system, like, I mean, just high level, those
I think at
tools.
the highest level, yeah, it's a sleeping bag and a pad, but no, I mean, the tents that are being used today are fundamental. I mean, the dome tent is all but obsoleted by the trekking pole tent, and the mummy bag is obsoleted by Zenbivy beds and quilts. And so, no, I do think that it's still a sleeping bag, it's still a tent, but it's not even close to what we were using a little while ago. And it's not about the materials, it's about the how you it's how you're living in these things that has sort of evolved. So I do, I guess it's still, you still need to cook, eat, sleep when you're out there sort of traveling around, but I do think that the tools have really evolved, especially in the ultralight space where you're really testing, you're getting to that edge of, it's no longer comfortable and kind of coming back. And so there's a lot of testing what the limits are that happens there that I think makes things evolve sort of quicker. I don't know. What do you
Martina,
think?
what was your in asking that, what kind of angle were you thinking at?
Well, I think like maybe I'm going too high level, but like I could see this argument that says the outdoor industry isn't innovating because the tools that we're using on the daily, the things that we just noted, food systems, sleep systems, carry, footwear, those are all fundamentally what we carried 13, 15, 18 years ago in the outdoors. But that materials really have changed. And that's been my primary experience. But I also want to say, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how materials have evolved, but in our playbook. But I also need to caveat that by saying that Swift Industries' story started with me and a sewing machine and a roll of fabric in our basement. That was 17 years ago. And as a one-person operation with no money, I think maybe, Michael, I'm going to imagine that you're at some point based in Seattle because of your histories with these companies. We would go up to Seattle Fabrics and get rolls of fabric there. And really like innovation and materials were hyper limited to us as makers because of MOQs on more expensive textiles. I mean, I remember when Dyneema came out on the market and I was just like drooling over it, but there was no way that we were A, gonna afford that yardage, and then B, our equipment couldn't even handle those textiles. So I would say like my experience and Swift's experience of scaling our company, also we encountered a lot of limitations over the years by doing in-house manufacturing to what we could innovate with. We never went the route of things like 3D printers and that kind of stuff. So I think we also kind of like approach things in a very hands-on, maybe like Luddite-ish way. Um, but um, but I think that once we started to scale and we started to be able to look up and around a little bit more, is when we started to be able to find lighter weight fabrics, more durable fabrics. Um, Lots of them were plastics, and in all different kind of forms, that are like essentially woven or laminates or molded stuff. And so that's why I really am like kind of globbing onto this materials thing a little bit more. And maybe that's just like over 17 years as I was growing a small business, like my blinders were opening up just a little bit. But that's where that question was coming from a little bit. Any thoughts on that?
Well, no, I mean, I think that both of you can kind of be right depending on what angle you're looking at it from. I mean, I think yeah, there has been a lot of fabric innovation, and I think one of the things that pops to mind for me, Martina, is just the accessibility of fabrics in general over time. I mean, I think part of the reason why there are so many cottage brands now that are able to get their start is because there is access to DCF, there's access to Alpha, that you are able to buy things in small quantities because there, is an actual desire for that. And so you can have really
Totally.
premium fabrics that someone in there with a sewing machine in their basement can get access to now that they were not able to get access to 20 years ago. With places like Ripstop by the Roll just kind of making that be a customer facing friendly space.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that I think we've you know DCF, like, it's to some extent, even thinking about it with Z-Packs, it's like hard to separate necessarily even like the thought or the growth of DCF without thinking about Z-Packs or thinking about Hyperlight, two kind of iconic brands that have both kind of defined the ultralight space through their selection of fabric. So I think that's fascinating, because I think when people think about ultralight in general, yeah, they think about things like Dyneema or X-Pack or Ultra or Alpha, is that it feels like it can be really defined by that. And then on the and yeah, and to some extent, like, yeah, tense kind of in their basic thought, or I doubt Mike or Mateo will like this, but to some extent, when I see all the discussion that's on like Facebook backpacking groups about which quilt is the best or what sleeping bag's the best, I'm like, it's just I don't know, it's like 10 denier nylon with some down. Like, it's just not that important. I know that's a wild oversimplification of the thing, but I think you can look at it from one angle and say, oh man, there's so much intentionality into the design features that go into this. And you can look at it from another side and be like, it's just nylon and down. And I don't know if either side is necessarily wrong. Like, if you're just thinking about like what can make me going outside and what can I still be comfortable in, like, you can deep dive into all of those differences, or you can't. So I think it's as complicated or as simple as you really want it to be able to make. And yeah, so that could be an entire panel in and of itself.
I'd like to add, there's I think it's easy, right? And like you said, Lloyd, it's maybe it depends on what side of it. It's easy to argue like a backpack is a backpack is a backpack, or a pannier is a pannier is a pannier, right? It's like, okay, you got access to lighter weight fabrics, and that, which obviously is an innovation, and that innovation, if only used in terms of introducing the new fabric to replace the old fabric, you got the weight advantage of the new technology. But if that's where you stop, then I would say, okay, then that was the main innovation. I think what you've seen a lot of companies do is like reimagine the feature sets, right? Which is more of like a philosophical innovation. I think as the weights of certain items have dropped, you realize, okay, maybe it doesn't need this thick of webbing, or maybe the way we use this closure system now doesn't need to be as robust as it was before. So you start to reimagine the components and the way some of the features go together and how they actually function. And that started with the lower weights, providing you with like a little bit a series of advantages maybe. So I mean, I think it's like you take a frameless backpack, like a frameless backpack is a frameless backpack. It's got straps and it's a bag and you throw a couple pockets on it. And I think it's easy to say like, oh, where's the innovation? And that, but there are a lot of companies doing these like philosophical, like little changes and different approaches to how you just like how you do a side strap. Like that could be an innovation where you're like, yeah, at the end of the day, it functions the same, but you're like, yeah, but we made it easier. We made it so you could use one hand. We are like, you know, it dropped the weight quite a bit. So there's definitely can be more than just the fabric. But it could be maybe I'm just trying to convince myself, but it could be it could be a philosophical like innovation more, where you're like just reimagining how something works.
Yeah, well, there's a technology innovation and there's design innovation, and the fabrics, like in and of itself, a lighter fabric doesn't fundamentally change the experience. It's if you build the exact same thing as before out of the lighter fabric, it's going to be lighter, and I shouldn't. It's going to change the experience in that it's lighter on your pack, but it's not going to fundamentally change like what you're talking about. Even something small that is now I can do that with one hand and oh God, I mean, I could think of a zillion things. Being able to just like grab the water bottle out of the backpack without having to take the backpack off. And that might seem like a small thing, but to me, that's a major innovation in a backpack that I don't have to take it off to get the water. And even though it's not a hard design challenge per se, the benefit that it can provide is significant. So I think all those things kind of add up. And I think, Mateo, your point about it's not about the new materials like making things lighter. The new materials make things lighter, and then they allow you to change how you approach the whole thing from the beginning again and go, well, I don't have to build it the way I did before. Now it's a lot lighter and I can build it a completely different way. And once we start thinking about building it that different way, it can open up other ideas like, oh, now that we're building it this way, here's 10 new ideas that it can kind of open up. So they go together. The technological part of it is that I don't do technological innovation. So I do design innovation. I just wait for I go to the fabric fairs and shop the fabric innovations like everyone else. I'm not involved in that sort of level of it. And plus I love to do things that change the experience, right? You know, living out of a trekking, no matter what you make a trekking pole tent out of, the experience living in it is different than a dome tent. It doesn't matter whether it's made out of DCF or 20 near nylon or whatever, that design is what really defines the experience. But it's true, you wouldn't have those designs if you didn't have the materials to be able to, you know, to kind of start you there. So
it turns out that you're all right. You're
yes.
both, you know, just like the outdoors, there's so many different ways to be able to do it correctly. And you know, I think yeah, design innovation, fabric innovation, they both kind of can happen simultaneously. And I think one of the coolest things about our subsection of the industry is that innovation kind of builds on itself. Like you see someone do something and then someone builds upon that, or someone does something kind of neat with the fabric, and then you see someone innovate in a different space with that fabric. And I do think kind of this overall point of, I think it has become a lot easier to go light and comfortable, and kind of that self-deprecating masochism that Mateo was talking about. I think, you know, maybe all of us have this within our journey, but when I first started going ultralight, I was like, I don't need anything. And then over time, I was like, well, maybe I do want a pillow, or, you know, like maybe like an appropriate R value sleeping pad like is actually an intelligent idea that I want. And definitely, like as I've gotten older, those things have become absolute non-negotiables. But I do think that, you know, those people that have that extreme take on super ultralight, they haven't gone anywhere, but the idea of ultralight just has gotten so much bigger than just being that. And I think that's something that we've seen a lot with Garage Grown, is that, yeah, you know, I think when I first started getting involved in this whole industry, I thought that everyone our whole client base was like through hiking the CDT every year, and be like, that is a tiny little percentage of what this is. Like the industry is so much bigger than that. And that's so wonderful, because it would be really crappy if the only way that you could get into the ultralight space or enjoy small and cottage brands would be to, hike 2,000 miles a year. But that you can be a part of this community. You can love ultralight gear, and do it 2 times a year for a weekend. And there's no like artificial barrier to entry that allows you to kind of do this thing. So it's definitely felt like whenever you start having bigger brands throwing around terms like ultralight in all of their product offerings, clearly there is something here that they think has more mass appeal than what ultralight meant 10 years ago, which is probably like flimsy and unsubstantial and is gonna break quickly, which I do not think is the connotation that ultralight has now, which is more in kind of like the high end technical side of things, which is a fairly like cool change in kind of I think how the word is perceived over time. But cool. I should probably ask more than one question, so I'm gonna go on to the next one. Okay. Um, yeah, I'd be curious, like, so we talked about innovation broader in the industry, but like, what does innovation look like for you all? Like, when you're looking at 2025, what are the ways that you're thinking about innovating? If that's fabric, if that's design, if that's changing up the way you do business. Yeah, what does innovation look like for your three companies in 2025?
I mean, since you went esoteric, Lloyd,
It's one of my faults.
innovate. I mean, at the end of the day, like truly for me, innovation is getting more queer people, femmes, and ladies out into the industry and doing things outdoors and feeling like we have community and that we're represented. So like that's a very, very big one. And then I think in terms of again, in terms of bringing it back into product innovation, we're actually at Swift, in a place where we're seeing folks not for whatever reasons, could be financial, could be life circumstances, not able or willing to invest as much in long distance bike touring. So we're actually seeing like a real push for like short multi-day trips, overnighters even. Kind of like the sub 2-4 scene is really like ramping up a lot. And then also just like a lot of local exploring in the bike scene. So we're just gonna continue working on making those experiences like as fun and light and agile as possible in our product designs. So that's what it looks like on our end.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, if gear isn't being used for fun and adventure, yeah, you have to question its utility. So it's awesome that you're kind of expanding how and what people think about how they use Swift gear. So sweet.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, for us, we have, the standard we use is, we could make gear that's, we're focused almost exclusively in the sleeping, sort of categories that go around sleeping bags, mattresses, pillows, those types of things. And when we create something new, that we try and not just make a better one. That I think is what, again, getting back to my baggage with my old jobs, is like I was always tasked with making the better whatever. Just do what Mountain Hardware did last year and make it better than what they did. And that's what you need to do. And so we don't think better is good enough. Better is very incremental, and it has to be not only better, but fundamentally different. And that's where it gets back to the experience. How is somebody's experience going to be different with this product versus the product that they had before? If it's really not going to be that much different, if it's just going to be a little bit better, a little bit lighter, a little more blue, the better color than they had, a little bit softer, even just slightly lighter. It's not very exciting. And so tend to find those things to be distractions. And so we try and focus on things that change the experience. And those don't come along every day. So we work on a lot of stuff that in fact, off camera over here, I have a whole pile of stuff that is stuff we've tried that we like it. It's good. It's better. We've made a lot of stuff that's like a little bit better, and we've made a lot of stuff that's different. But,
We'll all sign NDAs right now. So just
but none of it is
show
both
us what's there.
until we don't come out with it. Cool things that we're doing that we've kind of come along for 2025. We do storage down in our packs, and we've really been thinking about organization and storage and protection for the sleeping system. So you'll see some new things coming out this year that I don't think have been done by anybody, new takes on how to do that. And it's funny, I talk about that I'm not interested in new technology, and we have a whole new technology that we're launching, and we've launched in the last couple of days, which is a new type of down from a duck called the Muscovy duck. I think you'll be seeing a lot of it because the Muscovy duck can produce really high fill power, high quality, very durable down, and currently is about a third the price of goose down, which is currently the only other thing that can produce that high quality. And that's a whole other thing that we're sort of pushing to try and get into just new ways to bring something that, now that's a technology that doesn't fundamentally sort of change the experience, but it does reduce the cost, make it more durable. So some of those, and when you get into that, can it spur that innovation like Mateo was talking about earlier for new ideas to kind of go around things. So yeah, that's basically how we approach it at ZenBivvy. We try and do things that are just fundamentally different and better, because it's got to be both. Different in and of itself is sometimes the most fun, because we go, oh, that's different, all right, but not better. We do a lot of that. So and I think you have to create an environment where you're always okay with trying stuff that doesn't work. Well, let's build one of those and try it. We've done a variety of, a lot of different kind of ideas that have sort of been explored, and nothing that has yet, kind of reached our bar for both better and different. But when we do, we, hope to kind of blow up a category and come at it with a completely different, approach.
Before we go over to Mateo, we use the mantra a lot at Garage Grown of try it, change it, try it again. Of just like that being you can't expect perfection out of the gate. Like one needs to be able to iterate on it. And we similarly have a bin full of weird sample stuff that we get that is, not off camera at the moment, but will not be shown because, yeah, different isn't always good. Sometimes different is something, like there's a lot of cool products on Garage Grown. There's a lot of different products that are not on Garage Grown that, yeah, that are just either too niche or don't have a particular use case, but, they all kind of like, they all exude some level of innovation, even if, no one's ready for that innovation yet, or no one's asking for that innovation. But, Mateo, how about for you? What does innovation look like at ZPAX?
Oh, it was so great to go last because Martina and Mike talked about so many things that resonated. But I got a funny behind the curtain side story here involving Mike and his Muscovy duck down. We've been using that in a couple of our bags for like 2 months, but we were like low playing the change from Goose Down to Muscovy to see if the customers if it made a difference in sales. And then Mike comes out with an email that's like, we're the first brand to be using this stuff. And I was like, eh. And our owner saw it and he was like, we dropped the ball on that one. I was like, I don't know, you didn't want to talk about it. So we didn't. But it's just so funny, like to take two different marketing approaches to the same, like, I don't know if I call it innovation, but it is a change for sure.
So you put it in and we're using it for high fill power.
Yeah. Well, we have 900 fill power. Muscovy for like 2 months, I think, or maybe at this point 3 months. but not on all the bags, just a couple to see if it changed. Anyway, a little behind the curtain thing. But anyway, you marketed it, and my owner was like, "Oh, he's like, man, their marketing's better than ours." I was like, "Well, you said you didn't want to really push that we made the change." But anyway, it's a little funny
Mateo,
story.
when you start using eider down, you can make a big deal about it. Okay.
Okay. The next, if we make any other insulation change, I'm going to make a first brand to use it email, no matter what. But to Martina's point, right? This is talking about people moving away from the more longer duration cycle trips. I think as a company whose bread and butter is like $700 tents, I think the economy is a little tight for that right now. So you're seeing the tent sales slow down, but actually our website sessions, the orders per month are going up, but what it is that our average order value is going down. And a lot of that is because in the last year and a half or so, maybe 2 years, a lot of the innovation we've been doing is not only introducing some clothing like our Octa line, like a fleece pullover, Octa pants, Octa hats, all kinds of stuff, but we also like things like our camp shoes, our potty pouch, like all these like sunglasses cases, all these like little things where it's like basically we're like, we have a list of like, what are things that people are carrying that we don't carry? Why don't we carry them? Let's make a version that will carry, right? So we're looking at a lot of $100 or less price points because anybody can click on an ad. Not anybody, most people can click on an ad and drop $20 to $50 and not feel like they're not going to make rent. Not many people are clicking on an ad and like buying a $700 tent like on a whim, right? So we're definitely seeing some innovation there. And then I think when you start talking about the big three, the backpacks, the shelters, and the sleeping bags, it's kind of like, to Mike's point, it was like such a pain point for me. Is like a lot of things we have done with the tents is like make them better, make them better, make them better. And I think you see our Pivot Solo and soon to be the Pivot Duo and the Pivot Trio are going to replace our offset line, because really it's like we just made that line better. And so it's like, I hate cannibalizing our own sales. And like, so sometimes our innovation isn't necessarily what I really want, like, right, in terms of that, where it's like we'll cannibalize our own sale. So it's funny because 2 days ago I wrote a big thing on the design board and I was like, here's all the shelters we got coming, here's all the backpacks we got coming, and there's it's hard to revolutionize the sleeping bag at this point, but basically I was like, where's the innovation? I like challenged the team. I was like, where are we, like, so to ask this question. But so I think shelters, I'm really pushing to come out with a series of winter tents, not something we have. There's not a ton of ultralight winter tents, so like I think that's something I want to push. That will not cannibalize the sale. Like nobody who buys one of those tents was going to buy another one of our tents, right? Real big thing is all of our backpacks have transitioned, even though the frame packs aren't announced this way yet, to an interchangeable strap system where you can choose between 3 style straps on any single one of our backpacks. So it's like the innovation is just making them interchangeable, right? Like every one of those styles of straps has existed and a backpack has existed. It was just finding a way to make them all fit together. And then I've got some other ideas for that. And I hope this makes Martina happy with what was one of her lead-in answers to the question was giving women more options, like, right? And that's like a big thing for us, is we have a couple women's clothing options that are coming, and also just making the backpacks in general more women friendly. So I just feel like in the ultralight backpacking space in particular, there hasn't been a lot of focus on giving women really what they deserve and like options that they deserve. I think if you look at like the PCT through hiker survey for the last 3 to 4 years, it's like women were 40% of through hikers, 43%, 45%. It's like they're making up this gigantic chunk of the long distance hiking community, and I just don't see gear companies giving them the respect that they deserved. And we are guilty of it for, well over a decade ourselves. So it's definitely something that is a focus. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a huge innovation, but it's definitely a shift in our mindset and who the core customer really is.
Thanks all. We're kind of wrapping up the corner on our hour here, but just wanted to thank the three of you for all your insights and for running such cool, innovative companies. And I'll turn it over to Liz because I'm sure we've got some questions from folks that they want to ask and to know about your thoughts on.
Thanks so much, Lloyd, for the great moderation there. We've got some great questions from the audience, and you all are welcome to drop some questions in the Q&A as long as we have time. One of the questions I thought was the most interesting is someone that says, what's the best surprising feedback you've received from customers that's changed the way products are designed or marketed in the last few years for your company? And I'm sure you all have really great stories, but since we're running out of time, if you could just keep your story as short as you can to get your point across, that would be great. Thank you.
For ZenBivvy, I'll just go real quick. The thing that keeps for our business that really surprises me is how much the customers, it's funny to hear Matteo, but how much the customers are wanting high-end products. I keep trying to come up with, people complain about how expensive ZenBivvy is, and we keep coming up with like these more value-oriented options, and they are not our best sellers. Our best sellers are the most expensive thing. And so that is the opposite of really everything that I've experienced in my whole work life. Because generally, people are looking for that more approachable sort of price point. And I don't know whether it's our category or just our size as being kind of a smaller up and coming. But it is something that I think is surprising to me every time we kind of look at it, that people are wanting that. It could be that because they see a sleeping bag like a tent as a big investment in money, and so you're kind of pushing yourself to it. But that's a trend that we continually see, is sort of the people will spend money for quality and lighter weight when it's substantiated in some way. That's always shocking to me, because in 30 years in the outdoor industry, it's very unusual. We sell more 900 fill power down than 650 fill power down, and I've never done that in any other places that I've worked. So I think it's just the nature of this category and these customers to want to kind of have the highest level experience that they can.
Thanks so much, Michael. Martina, do you have any thoughts on this?
So we had one of our very first products. So we came on the market taking innovative, lighter weight synthetic textiles and applying them to classic bicycle bag designs, very modeled after kind of like French randonneering bags and British style bikepacking bags from ye olde times. And what we did was we made this saddle bag that is called the Zeitgeist Pack. Y'all should go check it out. It is our flagship model and started exclusively as a saddle bag. And then, to my absolute dismay, in 2015, some genius fool put it on his handlebars. And I was like, okay, this is brilliant. And this is not what this bag is designed for. Like, you're on to something, but like, it's not going to hold up that way. So we completely redesigned the bag, and now it is probably 85% applied to the handlebar bags and has become, truly a leader in its category. It's totally changed front bags. So that was a customer who had an idea that I didn't like. I liked it high level, and then had to really think about the design to make it correct. And it remains our flagship product to this day.
That's a great story. And Matteo, I know we've talked quite a bit about how angry customers have helped CPACs innovate. What's sort of your classic example of this?
I don't if I'm going to tell a short story, I think I would tell us a story of us being stubborn. Is like so I would say like the number one complaint we got on our tents is that they are like the classic duplex tent is that it has a rainbow zipper, and it's like the only complaint with rainbow zipper, rainbow zipper. I hate, and like everyone who hasn't never used it would be like, it's gonna fall into the dirt, it's gonna do that, and like we're always like, no, it's fine, it never did. And like how long it took us to like finally like come out with tent options that did not have a rainbow zipper. It was like what's surprising, I guess, is how many people don't like a rainbow zipper, and then also negatively from our standpoint, how stubborn we were as a company to not address it. So I would go with that. Like people who don't like rainbow zippers really don't like rainbow zippers.
Thanks so much for sharing that story, Mateo.
Okay.
Now, I'm actually going to combine two questions. We got a question from Moondog. What first or adventure do you think that it's happened recently would not have been possible in the past 10 years due to lack of the sort of modern technological innovations that we've talked about? I'm going to flip that question a little bit too. What sort of groups of people have you seen that are going out in higher numbers, maybe possibly due to some of the innovations that have come out?
I would say that, definitely a group that has been just a growing part of the ultralight industry just is the 65 plus. I mean, the kind of there's a lot of older folks who ultralight isn't an option, it's a necessity if one wants to continue to keep backpacking. And yeah, it's really a big difference if you're carrying a 15-pound pack versus a 35-pound pack. And for some folks, that's what enables their knees to be able to handle elevation changes. And yeah, that there's just a simplicity of not having to trade safety and comfort and security for a pack that's for weight. So yeah, I definitely think that there are for younger folks, it's fun because you can go faster and longer and FKT stuff, and that definitely has become an entire culture that's been enabled through gear becoming lighter. But on the flip end, it also just makes, like, I think ultralight backpacking is just objectively easier than carrying more weight.
I would
Yeah,
completely agree with that too, Lloyd. And our through hiking over 60 panel is actually one of our most popular videos because there's such a big population of people who've waited until retirement to go out and to be able to do this through hike that's been their dream trip. And on the flip side too, I would say for bike packing, bike touring for me, the idea of trying to like balance a bike with sort of those traditional French style 70 pounds, like no way am I going to be able to bike a bike uphill with something that weighs, almost half my weight. So that's something that I think about too in that space. Sorry, Mateo, I interrupted you. I'm
No.
sure you've seen a lot over the years as well.
No, I would say I would frame this question or the answer in kind of a weird way. I think and it's kind of, it was to Lloyd's point a little bit. I think you see two sides of the same coin for first, and the first side is the first people to do something in a shorter amount of time, which is the FKTs. Now, I don't find that as a gear manufacturer nearly as rewarding. Like, yeah, you get some like press if they use your gear, but I don't find it nearly as rewarding as the other side. The first 65-year-old or 70-year-old to do this trail or to complete this trail. It's the longevity it's providing people in the outdoors to give you like the record setting on the other end as being the oldest person. I think those first are way more rewarding. So I don't think it's necessarily allowing something to be done that's never been done before. It's just allowing you to extend it on either end to either make it, if you're younger, to do it faster, or if you're older, to do it longer.
Yeah, the hyper athlete or the elite athlete actually benefits the least from new technology in any sport, mountain biking, skiing. They're already elite, and maybe the fastest known time they did might be an hour shorter because they were 4 ounces lighter. And but really, what the opportunity that the innovations that have come out in lightweight gear is that it just makes things so much more accessible. to everyone. And I think that's what you're talking about with older people. And that we get stories at Zenbivy all the time. I wasn't going anymore. I couldn't sleep anymore, and I did, so I hated it. And now I can sleep and I go. Those are things that are very inspirational. People are kind of getting out. And the biggest benefit of Ultralight is that it really can get more people outside. It makes it more accessible. You don't need to be an Uber athlete to carry a 25-pound pack on the weekend. You're going to go out and have a good time, whether you're an Uber athlete or not. So, the Uber athletes don't benefit very much. They always love the new gear. They always get the new gear. They benefit some from it. But the people who you change their life are generally not the people who are the Uber athletes. The Uber athletes are getting it done anyway, one way or another, with or without you. They're going to go do that fastest known time, and they're going to do it however they're going to do it. So.
Thanks so much, Michael. Now, Martina, I would love to hear for bike packing because it might be a totally different story for all I know.
We've just seen, well, for one, true, like bike packing in its current form is relatively young, right? So even in the last 17 years, there was when I started bike packing, bike touring, we called it, it was like, basically the model was you take 3 months, you do a long distance tour, front rear panniers, bob trailer, the whole 9 yards. And then people started getting really interested in ditching the racks because people were wanting to get off road more, and racks break when they are rattling for miles and miles and miles. And people wanted to be able to navigate single track on a bike and go camping. And so there's really like this very, very kind of like newish, right? 15 years, like movement in the bike camping world. And so in that regard, I think it is like really dropping the racks. We're going to see racks coming back, which is kind of wild. And I'm pretty excited about what rack makers are going to be doing that is going to address exactly the pain points that I just talked about. And then we will design bags to go on those amazing racks. So that's pretty exciting. But I think it just has created, also when I came into cycling, it was like there were performance athletes and the road scene was like booming. There was the counterculture of mountain biking, and then there was like kind of the urban scene. And each one like really lived in this like very independent niche, very much didn't want to interact a whole lot with each other. And I think that the bike packing community is so fun for me because it has actually really invited just the outdoor community into cycling, and vice versa. It's been this beautiful mashup, and that's where I found my people in a really, really exquisite way. So I don't know, I think it's just a growth and a melding of communities that I hadn't experienced before, if we're talking about who might be getting out there in new ways.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm so glad we ended with you because it really seems like bike packing has had the most, maybe not first, but physical locations that people are able to go on single track or rougher terrains because of the innovation in technology. And certainly the sort of people like I probably wouldn't have been interested in carrying that bob trailer or whatever, but the sort of people who are like, oh, that could be pretty cool. I think that's definitely been enabled by the technology. Well, we are over time, and I just want to let Lloyd be able to wrap up, and maybe if our panelists have some parting thoughts on what they think about 2025 gear innovations and lightweight and ultralight gear. Lloyd, I'll let you take it away.
I don't really have anything else to add, just an appreciation for our panelists. And yeah, any parting shots, any like last words of inspiration for things to stay tuned for from your various companies, or just last little nuggets of wisdom that you want to impart?
Not really, but I thank you for having us. And it was super nice to meet Matteo. I'm just excited to see the guy from the ads, because that's how I know him, is the guy who I clicked on a couple of those Z-Pack ads and I get them all now. So the rock and roll and
my apologies
for all of it. And nice to meet both of you. It's great to hear other perspectives on what other people are doing. And thank you to everybody who attended. And I hope you found it was worthwhile for you.
I wanted to invite everybody in this space to keep an eye out for Swift Campout, which is our annual solstice overnight. It's an amazing way if you are bike packing curious, bike camping curious. It is an S24, so a sub 24-hour adventure that happens globally, decentralized, and people go bike packing on the summer solstice all over the world. So stay tuned and follow us on Instagram and hop on. It's an amazing event.
And yeah, I'd say thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the other panelists and being here and answering the questions. I would say I can't speak for the other brands, but I want to project that I believe this to be true. Is like I think the speed from design to market for all three of our brands is much faster than a major brand. They're big brands that you would normally have to deal with. So for us, and that's what I'm saying, I'm hoping this is true for you guys. I think it is, so I'm going to just speak for you. Is if you want anything from any of these three brands, email us. Tell us what your needs are. Tell us what your wants are. Tell us what your pain points are, the problems you want solved, because you're going to get responses. And it may not work out for one product or the other, but like, so much of what we do is customer driven, customer request driven. And a lot of times that speed from the initial email to when it's on the site is very, very short, especially compared to big brands. So like, don't be afraid to reach out to companies like ours and like ask for what you want if you don't see it.
Thank you so much, Mateo. Thanks, Mateo, Michael, Martina, and thank you, Lloyd, for moderating. I'm Liz again from Treeline Review, and we're so happy that you were able to join us. And if you missed any of this, we will be posting it on YouTube, so keep an eye out for that email. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us.